Hi, and welcome to RealClearFetish Talks RealClearPlay, a podcast that dives into sobriety, kink, and everything in between. This week, we are going down under yet again for the second time this season to talk to Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hi, buddy. How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm very well, and you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's been a busy week. It's only Tuesday, so it's good. I
Yeah,
just managed to get back into this, back to you just in time. I was still in the office, sort of tinkering away. So yeah,
well, you're a busy man. So, with every episode I start with four standard questions at the start, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
sounds good.
Fantastic. To start with, names, pronouns, and title.
Well, probably just a he, him, a mister, and pretty bog standard stuff, really.
Fantastic. And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, God, where to start? Well, I'm interior architect by trade. That's what I do for a living. So built up the business over many years. I've been working internationally for many years. So I was living in London on and off for about 10 years. Never saw you there. And then I was in New York for a few years, California for a few years, and then relocated back to New Zealand and then started the business down there, interior architecture firm. And then just grew the business over a few years, which has been pretty crazy. And then branched into China, really big projects and big, greenfield developments and all sorts of things. And then, COVID hit, which was pretty crazy. A lot of my life has been work. I've worked pretty hard. And sort of halfway through COVID, I realized that I really needed to diversify the business. And I realized I didn't really want to be dependable on, client projects and billing hours, so to speak. So then I launched a gallery, which was pretty exciting. So we opened our first one in Arrowtown, which was in New Zealand. And we've just opened our second gallery now here in Sydney. I've been here for about a year. It's been a hell of a ride, beyond actually when you actually stop and think about things, Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, but very rewarding. And to have Sydney open and get to a stage where that's really perpetuating really nicely and building lovely relationships with clients and meeting great people. I feel like now, I moved here in June last year, and now I'm just starting to feel more settled, which is great. When you walk down the street, you bump into people. Oh, hello, how are you? How are you? And it's just quite nice, and sort of people recognize you, and it's just you feel like you're getting part of a community and part of a city, and you get your bearings, and life just starts feeling a bit more normal.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been a bit of a ride since moving to Sydney, but I'm sure we'll unpack that in due course.
Yes. And just so everyone kind of gets an idea where you come from, are you completely sober, clear-headed, or a social drinker?
I'm a social drinker, so I don't really drink during the week because I'm too blooming busy. And then even some weekends, I don't drink either because I just really can't be bothered. And I'm a real morning person, so I get up very early. I'm usually awake 5:30 every day, and then I'm in the gym. So I go to the gym basically 7 days a week, but sometimes 6 days a week. So the odd day I don't go because I'm too bloody tired. But you just take the wins. So it's I like to have my mornings, and I like to have a really clear head because there's so much going on, and even when I'm not working, I'm generally working. So it's a funny one.
Yeah. And the last question, what is clear play to you and why is it important?
I think clear play to me is really important. I like to be very present when I'm having sex. And for me, connection is a really big thing. And I think, especially when you're involved in quite heavy kink, that level of connection and intimacy, I think for me is and probably the most intimate you can be, especially when you're into certain things. I don't know, these things, those things,
For
both of
anyone
those things.
for anyone listening, Jason is now showing his fists.
Oh, dearie Lord. Okay. Anywho, look, it's an interesting one. So I'm a big leather guy. I've always loved leather. It's just been a really big thing for me. Not just the smell, it's the feel, it's the sound, it's the look. I always feel probably my most dominant self when I'm in my gear. The gear always stays on. It's never not present. But in terms of being clear-headed and sober, when I'm having sex, that to me, not only from a dominant point of view, but also from like a connection point of view, It also helps me read my partner a lot better. You know, all of those small movements and feelings, eye contact, connection, really being able to read somebody well and understand what their needs are during that is really important. I really love to please my bottoms and I like to work them over pretty hard. So for me, I have to be really present and very sober. And the thought of having sort of chemsex for me just doesn't appeal at all because on the times that I've been involved in those situations, and we'll probably unpack that too, not a great experience. You know, there's just nobody home. And I'm like, you know, it's just not for me. I just think it's kind of pointless, really.
I fully get with what you're talking about. I just came back from Berlin yesterday and I had a lovely kissing session with this man and just my type, tattoos on his neck, kind of bad boy looking, slightly older, but he was just so drunk.
Mm,
So there was no one home.
mm,
So it was just like and so drugs and is one thing, but also alcohol.
yeah.
There's no connection, when you're not on the same level as each other.
Oh, look, honestly, I'd rather come home, have a wank with a box of tissues, you know what I mean, go to sleep. Like, I just don't see the point.
To be
You
honest, I
know, I'd
did.
rather not have any sex than bad sex, you know?
Yeah, to be honest, I did because it was just like people were too drunk. So I was just like, I'm just gonna have a wank at home and just think about the gear I saw in the
It's probably a
evening.
lot easier sometimes.
Oh yes, oh
Right.
yes. So you say you're from New Zealand. How was it to grow up in New Zealand?
Well, I was raised and schooled in New Zealand, which was an interesting thing. I mean, I love New Zealand. It's a great country, but I think New Zealand is one of those places you either go to breed or die. You know, there's kind of not much in between, and there's not really a hell of a lot happening. You know, it's in terms of even from the fetish and the kink side, there's nothing really going on. I think they have a few leather events and things that they organise, and the guys that originally organised that are now living in Melbourne. So they've all bunked off there. And then there's been like a mass exodus from New Zealand. You know, everyone's left. I mean, the economy's in the toilet. I mean, including myself. I mean, I moved over here in June last year. And New Zealand's a great place in terms of raising a family. Look, it's relatively okay, but over the last few years and since COVID, I just don't think it's going to recover economically. It's just really, really bad news. And you speak to a lot of people that are still there, very close friends, and they said no one's really spending. It's in a shit house. It's such a shocker. So the best thing I did was to move the business over here, and we've just closed operations actually in New Zealand, which has been a really good move. So that's not a drain anymore. So yeah, certainly starting to feel the benefits of that. You know, after a while of being here. So, you know, I mean, it's a beautiful country. I'd encourage anyone to visit. The South Island is way more beautiful than the North Island. If you've ever seen like Lord of the Rings, I mean, it's very cliche, but you know, the mountains and the landscapes are, I mean, they're just magnificent. You know, it's so beautiful. And when you get off the plane, you breathe this, when you step onto the tarmac at Queenstown, you smell this beautiful alpine air and it's dry and it's clean and the skiing's pretty good, but it's not great. Like, it's actually cheaper to go to Japan and ski in Japan than it is in Arrowtown and Queensland. I mean, there's 3 ski fields, but actually 4, and there's Wanaka. I mean, it's great, but I mean, if you can ski in New Zealand, you can ski anywhere.
I must admit, when you say ski New Zealand, that had never clocked my brain that you
You
could do that in New Zealand.
can
But
do
then
everything in New Zealand.
apparently, yes. And it's like, okay, fine. That was not necessarily the destination I would go on a skiing trip for. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that well, as a longtime movie buff, New Zealand would be like if I go to Sydney or Melbourne and so on, I need to book at least a couple of days in New Zealand and
Yeah.
fly over because
Yeah.
I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan.
Well,
So
then you'll be going off to Hobbiton and you'll be doing all of that.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. I'll
I
be
mean,
a
I swear to
proper
God, I'm
tourist.
not taking you there because I've done it so many times with friends. I just can't do it anymore. Like, but I will happily drive you there and pick
It's
you
like
up.
you go and play in the
Yeah,
Hobbit
you
hole.
have fun. I'll be down there doing something else.
Yeah, well,
It
New
is fun.
New
You'd enjoy it.
Zealand's marketing for New Zealand is excellent because they use the Hobbit
Yeah,
thing a lot.
you gotta do. Look, it's a great country, but again, I think it's suffered so badly economically, and I think with also the tourism drying up as well, the Americans haven't been coming in, the Chinese don't really spend. The Brits do come in quite a bit, and you do get a few, a cross section of Europeans that are coming in as well. But generally speaking, people come in, they're not really supporting the economy hugely. So it has actually become kind of problematic. Even the housing market's kind of crashed there as well. So I know it sounds a bit doom and gloom, but I hope it recovers because it is such a beautiful place and it could be such an incredible country to live in. But right now, it's just the infrastructure is falling apart, healthcare eroding. I could go on and on. So Australia's been an amazing move. I really love living here and starting to feel so settled. It's a great city. You can walk everywhere. Like I live in Darlinghurst, which is kind of, I think they call it like the gay bubble, I think. It's very close to everything. So I can walk to my gallery. I can walk to my gym down the road. It's very easy to get everywhere. The infrastructure works, healthcare. There's a real lightness of foot in Australia. There's a happy undertone of people that walk around. You walk into the city, it's busy. Every restaurant's full. It's hard to get a booking. Like it's buoyant, and it feels good. They're talking at the moment economically that it's a bit, sort of flat, but I don't really see a lot of evidence of that. Some of the projects that we're working on and the people that we're dealing with and the people that come into the gallery, they're very well heeled and they want that point of difference. So that's been a really great exercise, meeting heaps of wonderful people. We are opposite a little church. And so we have quite a lot of homeless people around there and actually drug users as well. But, we've been getting quite involved with the church and helping activations there and doing fundraisers and things like that with events, which has been great. There's also a soup kitchen, which we help out with occasionally when I can do that at night and I'm not too tired.
when you have some spare time.
A great community. So you do get a few crazies walking around and the screaming and the shouting, but it all adds to the color and the vibrancy of, the whole area, and such a cross section of people in just such a small area as well. It's pretty phenomenal, really. I love it.
Fantastic. And so, like, growing up in New Zealand, when did the kinky stuff start? When did Kinky Jason arrive?
I think that the kinky stuff started very young. I remember probably one of my first memories was, I think it was a friend of my father's. He'd come over to the house and I think he turned up on a Harley and he was in full black leathers. And I remember him lifting me up. And I must have been, I'm going to say like 5 or 6, something like that. I was pretty young. But it's one of my first memories, quite vivid. And he put me up onto his lap. I remember sitting there and I think it was the smell. I'm a real smell guy, absolute pit hound. I don't use Under Armour or anything like that. I hate anyone that smells like perfume. I'm like, just stay away.
This is now where Zoom has to install a smello thing you can do.
Smellometer.
Yeah, yes, it's like scratch and sniff.
Yeah. It's been pretty funny, but so smell's always been a really big thing. So when the smell of it, I think it's always been a really big thing. And then I think as I've developed over the years, I remember as a teenager, like getting into gear or buying my first jacket or, and then I just started becoming a prolific collector. Like my leather collection it's actually out of control. Like it's bordering on a bit ridiculous. I have to kind of do a cull. So recently just moving over here, I've gone from a much larger home to a smaller home, which has actually been a really lovely exercise. So learning to, curate the things that you really like. I now have a guy coming, a thing called Air Tasker, where they come and they photograph all the stuff to stick on eBay. So he has about 8 boxes of things to go through and catalog and put online. And that's in addition to, I've got another full container of stuff coming over from New Zealand. And I had a storage unit where I would actually keep all my bike suits because I also ride bikes. I've got a Ducati and an old BMW that I restored. Love them. So they've literally just left New Zealand yesterday, so I've been waiting a while for them. But yeah, the collection of leather has become so ridiculous. You could literally swim in it. Like it's out of control. Like I could take you up to the closet and show you just a small part of it. It's a bit mad. So yeah, I'm having to curate and get rid of a lot of stuff because I have over the years, I might buy one thing, but then I actually would have bought it twice from somebody else, So also secondhand bike gear and stuff from, bikers who actually use track gear and stuff like that. I love, the more beaten up, road rash, sweaty, oily, leathery. I'm just like, I'm absolutely happy as a pig and shit,
Well, yeah, I probably don't have as big a collection as you do, but I am getting to a point where it's an in, one out policy because there is
Yeah.
only so much storage I have before it becomes an issue. And in the last couple of years, it has exploded a bit.
I think I'm ready to get another storage unit here and just start putting things in there because like there's some things you just can't bear to get rid of. They're
No, 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 no.
quite sentimental. And then I think you sometimes fluctuate in size. So you've got to have stuff for not only yourself, but you also need to have extra sizes for people that don't have gear when you are doing play sessions or group play and everyone wants to get in kit. So it's quite handy.
So you're happy to dress a boy up if
I
the
am
boy comes
indeed. It's
over.
one of my favorite things. It's always a nice exercise.
You you get to choose.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an interesting thing. So yeah, kink wise, I mean, leather I think is a really big thing for me in terms of the smell. But equally, I absolutely love fisting. I've always been a fisting top and started that very very early on in my one of my first gay relationships. Actually, my partner at the time, who I was living in California, London, Oxford with, etc. He was a big fisting bottom, and I mean, very talented. I've never seen anyone put things away like he did. But that was pretty incredible. So from my early 20s, I, really got into it then. And I've always loved it, whether it be depth or girth, whatever. And then equally things like I enjoy a bit of impact play, throat play, restraint, love a boy in a full rubber hood, and then a head harness, being tied down or strung up with a spreader bar and used and abused. And, group play with, multiple hands and multiple fists and just I enjoy sex. I'm very sex positive and very open minded. I've seen everything there is to see from branding to cutting to whipping to flogging to beatings to whatever. Like so nothing really phases me. I think they always try anything once, and if you like it, carry on. And if you don't do it again.
And definitely some of the practices you just mentioned there is stuff you should definitely do sober.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree with that. Yeah, there's some things you absolutely have to do sober. That you just actually I couldn't even imagine not playing sober. To be fair, I've always played sober. I've never used meth. I've not even done. I've even never even done G for God's sakes. Like I think the most I've ever done is probably a party pill and a line here and there when you've been out or something like that, and that's probably been about the extent of it. And obviously drinking, but I think when you've got a relatively large career and you're busy and you're responsible
Mm.
for people and people's livelihoods, you have a responsibility yourself as well to be, well maintained, look after yourself and be able to have the capacity to deal with all the different things that come at you, not only professionally, but personally, networking, events, all of those sorts of things play a part in managing the social aspect, professional relationships, and getting through life in a way that you're always sort of moving that dial forward, rather than sort of dealing with a hangover every week or something. It's just not sustainable.
There is definitely like a tendency with like if you deal with client, you just take them out for dinner and then you have alcohol and then yeah, it that can become almost a pattern or a habit in itself when you're dealing with clients.
You have to be quite careful. I mean, when I do a lot of work abroad, because I'm still working abroad, I have to sort of say, oh, I'm sorry, no, I don't have a really good liver at the moment, and my doctor's told me that I can't drink. So that usually gets me off the hook, which is pretty good, and sort of, sip on a lime sparkling when I'm pretty happy as. And then usually, when you're dealing with those sort of schedules too, you're up at 5, you're in bed by 10 or 11, and then you're up at 5 again the next day. So they're pretty ruthless kind of and relentless business trips. You just go the whole time. You come home and you're just exhausted. So yeah, it's just something for me that it's never really appealed to, get involved in that too much. To be fair.
And how did you get into architecture?
Well, I actually was originally started off in publishing, amazingly enough, when I moved to London, and I absolutely hated it. I mean, I worked for a communications company in centre London, and I mean, it was okay. It was pretty good. I did pretty well there, and it was all right. But I mean, again, just as a creative, it's just all admin. But I mean, you learn some really valuable skills across the board, and then left London. So I followed my heart to London with my first love. His name was David. He was a lovely Irish man. We're still really good friends, actually, and we still communicate. on Instagram and stuff. But he had moved over. He was like doing a backpacker trip. I was quite, young. He was the hot Irish guy, beautiful chiseled jaw. He had the long dark hair. I mean, he was beautiful, but he was also a lovely human being. And we just hit it off. And so we had this sort of romance. And then he was like, well, let's do it. So I sort of saved. He had left and he'd gone through Australia and the Fijian Islands, wherever else, and Raro, and headed back to the UK. And then I moved up not long after, probably around 6 months or something. So my grandfather pulled some strings and got me into this publishing job. And then I was there for about a year, which was pretty nice. It was pretty good. And we originally stayed with his sister, who was Irish, and her husband. And it was lovely, just in North London. And it was great, And then we moved into our own little place, also in North London, up Hampstead Way. And I liked that quite a bit. It was quite a lovely time. But then we kind of drifted apart. I was doing with work. I was probably pretty young. He was too, to be fair. And we were both kind of just finding our way. And so then I decided to move back down to Australia to stay with my father for a little while in Sydney. And then was working again in publishing, but in sort of more of the fashion side, the fashion industry side, and sort of arranging things like shoots and stylist work and that sort of stuff. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I was doing pretty well at it, and sort of got into that through some other family connections. And then I met that partner that I'd moved back to England with. So we met, and he was a big Kingstone. He sort of pulled quite a lot of stuff out of me. It was quite an interesting journey. And we were together for about sort of 6 or 7 years, something like that. So I moved back to Oxford and stayed with some friends there. And then he got a job in Silicon Valley for a tech startup. So then the next thing I know, we're moving to California. I couldn't legally work in the States. So I was on a partner visa, and he was a VP of this company that eventually sold out, which was, very profitable. And that's when I thought, well, what am I going to do? So he sort of says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I probably want to do interior architecture. That's the one thing, he even tried to make me do a touch typing course once as well. What a disaster. Absolute fucking disaster. I mean, to this day, I still can't touch type, and I really wish I'd paid more attention in that class. Anyway, I digress. It was, interesting. So we moved over there. We're in California. We were there for about sort of 7 odd years, something like that. We were in Palo Alto. That was in the height of the tech boom. So it was a really crazy time. And so I started studying. And at the same time, I thought, well, I can't just, run everything on the home front. So I was looking after everything on the home front, the dogs, the cars, the house, And then I started working for the president of the Society of American Interior Designers. So I started working for her as an intern, as well as doing my studies at the same time. So, I was managing all the house stuff, as well as studying, as well as doing an internship. I mean, it was actually really great. It was an amazing time. Met some incredible people, and I learned so much. I mean, she really put me in good stead for my career. And then the company got sold, and then we moved back to the UK, which was great. I finished some studies back in the UK. He was still adjusting, finding another role, after anything like happened, because he's the kind of guy that needed to be busy. Otherwise, he was going to pull his hair out. He's a very talented man, incredible, marketing, comms, strategy, amazing chap. Anyway, so then I got a job I finished my degree, and then basically I got a job working for a company in Knightsbridge. And so they had me on the design side, which was pretty cool. And I was designing really high-end and bespoke cabinetry and interiors, that sort of stuff, which I was loving. It was a really interesting time. And then they said, look, you're not too great with the English, so I think we're going to move you to the New York office. You're way better with the Americans. So the next thing is I'm finding an apartment in Chelsea. And I remember being online, and I was talking to some people online trying to find a place. And I said, can you send me some photos of the apartment? And they were like, yeah, sure. So the next thing he sends through, his name was Seamus, and he was an engineer. Well, he was a telescope engineer, a designer for the Hubble Institute. Kind of crazy, intelligent guy. And my other flatmate there was called Rama, who was basically a industrial design, and was running things for like Swatch Watch, and just amazing guys. Anyway, so they send this photo through of this sort of abandoned warehouse with sort of a refugee family standing around bags of flour or something, just sort of old black and white from like the 1800s or something. And I just emailed them straight back and I went, I'll take it. Because they obviously had a great sense of humor, you know. And look, the apartment was the coldest place I have ever lived in my life. I've never been so cold in my entire life. I mean, it was just a small amount of heating, but it was a full front to back apartment with a big plate glass window looking out onto Fifth Avenue between 19 and 20 on Fifth. And it was a great space. And so my partner at the time was still back in the UK. I was living in New York and then now working for this company, which was pretty amazing. And yeah, carried on there. And I was probably there for about 4 or 5 years, I think, in New York. And then my partner would come backwards and forwards sort of every 3 months. And then I would go back as well because I had to sort of go in and out, you know, because I was still working for an English company, but on American soil.
Yeah.
So, you know, but it was an incredible time of life. And I don't remember, I think maybe one time, I think I cooked once in the whole time in my apartment of living in New York in about 5 years. It was just insane. My next door neighbor, she worked for Vogue. And so, you know, ended up doing a lot of the shows and stuff and meeting a lot of the fashion crowd. I think Ricky Lake was in the building just down the hall at one stage. So she'd waddle along and get in the lift, you know. It was a great time and a great place to live too, on the corner of the northeast corner of Washington Square Park. So you could sometimes get up in the night, like 2 a.m. if you weren't sleeping. You'd walk downstairs, grab something to drink at the deli, like a hot chocolate or whatever, walk through the park, and the city was just always alive. There would be musicians playing music, or even just times where, you know, you'd have these big blizzards and the city would just be a wash of white and it would be so quiet, you know. And I look very, very fondly back on my time in New York. At the time, I think I was so busy working, I don't even think I managed to even get to the Eagle, which is a very big disappointment.
Do you know what my next question was, or was going to be? It was like, how does the fetish scene compare to the different places you've lived in the world?
The fetishing was pretty good. I think because I was sort of partnered at the time, I was probably a little bit, not hamstrung, but probably not doing the things that I wanted to do so much. It's not to say that opportunities didn't come along, but yeah, I mean, New York's a funny place. Between the West Coast and the East Coast, Americans are very different. Well, the culture is very different from city to city. I find that, like, I don't know, LA gays versus New York gays, I'm like, fuck me dead. Like, it's such a mind fuck. It's, you know, I kind of describe it like on the West Coast, people sort of say, hi, how are you? It's so nice to meet you. It's great. You're so friendly and positive and nice. And let's get together and let's do this and da-da-da. And so you go, okay, that's cool. I'm free on Wednesday. And they're like, oh, well, we'll call you. You know, like, it's very fickle, a lot of surface stuff.
Yeah.
But at least in New York, you kind of always knew where you stood with people. Like, it'd be like, hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. What can you do for me? You know, it was always about the deal, or about the thing, or the angle, but at least you kind of always knew where you stood. So you could pretty much spot authentic people from the ones that just wanted to get ahead, if you know what I mean. Fetish wise, you know, I think New York is a great fetish scene. And I talk to, you know, lots of people from all over, like on Instagram and things like that. And I love Instagram for that, because you feel part of this global community of kinksters and leathermen, and, you know, and it's inspiring and it encourages you to live outside of the normal, feel worried about, I mean, even now, like, I go to work, I'll wear, you know, great leather jeans or cargos, or wear leather kilts to events and work events and, you know, what have you. And there's always some form of leather on me somewhere, but it's an interesting thing. Sydney, I think, is quite young in its sort of fetish community. I think Melbourne's a lot more sort of piggy, for lack of a better word. And the guys down there seem a little bit more authentic and less worried about their appearances. Not that they're ugly. There's just I think they're probably just a bit more rugged, and they're probably not as concerned with the surface stuff or the veneer stuff, like, where do you live, what do you drive, how much money do you make, blah blah blah. Whereas Sydney's very much like that. Yeah. It's like, it's very kind of surface level. So it's interesting meeting people, and I think the kink scene here, especially, like, I mean, I go to some of the leather events. There's the Hyde, the Eagle, Sydney Leathermen, which is great. And so it's a lovely cross section of people who, from all different walks of life, who all enjoy the same thing. And it's lovely to be part of a community. And even though it's small, it's still very inclusive. Everyone tries their best to get along. There's, you know, there's always going to be politics in any sort of kink scene when those things are being arranged. I don't really know the ins and outs of it. I kind of dip my toe in and I jump out just as fast, So I kind of keep things on the peripheral because it
I,
just all gets
I
a bit too much with the whole sceney stuff.
I'm a little bit the same. We have leather clubs and so on, and I steer clear of being on any form of board because put gays in a room and everyone has an opinion and it gets a little bit heated and
Yeah.
I do you know what? I admire the work most of these clubs do and that is the main focal point and so
Yeah.
on. But when I hear some of the like tensions that sometimes appear, I'm quite glad to just be me and just enjoy my kink and so on. I'm happy to get involved with clubs if they want something to do with Real Clear Fetish or do a sober event, then I'll happily be involved. But I don't want to be on some kink board somewhere. And it's like I also sing in the London Gay Men's Chorus. I'm not even on the board there, and I see all
Yeah.
the fucking drama that sometimes is there. So
I'm like a drama-free zone. I've had enough drama in my
yeah.
life to have any more drama when I go out. You know what I mean? I just want to keep it all nice and easy. Yeah, and I think we've got quite a few mutual connections as well. People here and what have you. And, I think you've heard firsthand some of the things that have been going on. And you just think, really, what's the point? But yeah, sort of moving into other things, it was sort of like when I moved to Sydney, and probably one of the reasons why we were going to talk, I guess, was around, when I moved here. So I was with a partner back in New Zealand for around 2.5 years.
Mm.
Beautiful man, towering beast of a human, but we're still very, very good friends. Like he's become like family to me. Like we are so close and we talk every day. We moved over here from New Zealand. We decided to wrap things up. He'd lost his mum, which was really hard on him and was suffering a lot of grief. And I could see the writing on the wall with the economy in New Zealand. And I was like, shit, we need to get out of here before we can't. And
Mm.
so I remember sitting up in bed one day and I went, we got to go. I'm done. I'm absolutely out. So within 6 weeks, we had the houses like packed up, going on the market for rental, downscaled the business, let go a heap of staff. It was a really tumultuous time to say the least. And then, my partner at the time, his mum had died. So there was all of that to deal with on top of, restructuring the company and getting things set up and scaled down, getting ready to be able to do that move. So we went through a really tough time together. We went through really a lot together. And I think in terms of what couples go through, I think we probably went through more than most couples would go through in a lifetime in a very short amount of time, probably in a year's period.
Mm.
As I said, about, 2.5, 3 years together. But it kind of we got over here. And I think he, sort of was suffering from a little bit of depression, worried about getting a job and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, I had us pretty, relatively comfortable in terms of where we were at. So there wasn't a worry around that.
Mm.
And, but, it was just one of those things where we decided to separate. So during that separation, we sort of had a break and he met somebody and then I met somebody.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I met the wrong somebody who turned out to be, in the end, a recovering meth addict. So that was a really interesting experience. And I think from the point of view of maybe being able to sort of explain, or if anyone's out there and is listening to this and is dealing with that as a partner with someone who's using drugs, the toll that it takes on you, not only emotionally, physically, mentally, and, the fallout of that with PTSD and dealing with all of those sort of emotions where you just sort of, you're captive to this thing. So yeah, that was a very interesting experience. So I met somebody, after we sort of broke up, and it was a good 6-month period or something before we sort of started dating. And there was a couple of experiences that were pretty horrific. When I sort of walked in, I caught him with somebody using, and it was a very, very, very traumatic time. And this was, not so long ago. This is sort of about a year ago. So, I mean, even now there's like little pangs of PTSD that I'm sort of dealing with, and so, dealing with a therapist has been incredible. And, just feeling normal and back to being myself again has been a great rebuilding exercise, and work's going really well and got a great team. And so there's so many things I'm so grateful for. I'm a very grateful, happy person generally, I always said the glass is half full, not half empty. I always try and look at things positively and objectively to move forward in life in a way that helps you to navigate people, situations, finance, all of those sorts of things.
We had conversations when this kind of was just after it gone on, I think.
Yeah. I
And
remember I think I reached out to you. I was like, what do I do?
yeah, it's hard. I think sometimes when we talk about addiction and so on, we focus on the addict. We don't
Mm,
focus on the partners, the families, the friends.
yeah.
What do you do? And the end of it is like you can't do anything. It's you can be there, but you also have to keep yourself safe and sane in that situation. So if it gets to the point where you're just like, okay, I have to get out of this situation, there
Mm,
is no shame in that. You're not a bad person for leaving this person in distress because you're in distress.
mm.
And I think emotionally and physically and mentally, it's probably almost more draining for the person who's experiencing it at the sidelines, being not able to help.
This particular person was, from what I understood, from what I've learned. I mean, I've never been around meth. I've never done it. I never
Mm,
want to do it. I'm never going to do it. It's just a non-negotiable for me. And so quite early on, sort of, how do I say this? It's a tricky thing to kind of explain in terms of
mm,
how it sort of, I guess you could kind of describe it as like a crab or a crayfish or like a lobster in a pot of boiling water. The water just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And
mm,
before you know it, you're cooked.
yeah.
That's probably the best analogy I could use. So you met this chap, really loved from the surface level, very good looking, very successful, had everything going on, talked a really good game, amazing at the love bombing, and very narcissistic. And I've never really been around that. So I didn't really know what I was dealing with, but the whole thing was it felt very clever. And my emotionally just knew exactly what bloody buttons to push. I mean, this guy was a master at it, frighteningly so. And before I knew it, I was kind of like, falling in love and feeling quite good about things. And then the cracks started to happen. He would sort of disappear for 3 days and like all of a sudden be in great communication and then just nothing. You're like, well,
Mm,
what did I do? Is it me? Have I done something wrong? Like there's no communication. It was just a really weird thing. And that would happen one or two times. And then there was one stage I'd been at a dinner and I was coming back. We'd agreed to meet up after the dinner. And we got to the stage where, we had access to each other's apartments and whatever. And he wasn't answering a call. It wouldn't answer a FaceTime. It was really strange. And I thought, this just feels really off.
mm,
And so this is when I learned about what slamming was, when they actually inject meth rather than smoke it.
yeah.
He had quite a long history of doing that for quite a long time and apparently was quite well known in the community for doing that. So if anyone in the community is now listening, like, thanks for the heads up, guys. Great. That was super fun. So anyway, I thought I'll just go over there. So I did a drive over, and as I'm driving down the road, I'm kind of looking up, and I see the blinds in the bedroom are closed, and there's the lights on. He had these sort of colored lights and things that he enjoyed. And I thought, oh, here we go. You get that sinking feeling. And I was like, oh,
Mm,
shit. So I didn't even bother parking the car in the car space. I just parked in the visitors, went straight up. And as I was walking the door, a text message comes through, like literally zipped out to walk in, like, I haven't disappeared because there's been that history of disappearing and going into those meth binges, right? And then I fell asleep. I love you. And as I'm putting the key in the door, I open the door, I walk in, and he's walking out of the bedroom naked with his laptop. And there's another guy in the bedroom. And I'm like, I just looked at him and I was like, we're done. It was a really horrific experience.
mm,
And to have gone so far down the line and to have that person be secretly obviously using in the time that we were together and me not knowing what that looked like or understanding what those patterns might be was pretty scary. And then so I thought, well, I better get the lay of the land, right? So I walk into the bedroom and there's a meth pipe beside the bed. There's a needle on the bottom shelf. there's huge big toys everywhere because he was also very much into kink and pretty heavy kink, very heavy kink. And just the whole situation was just, even now, I like talking about it, like the impact that it's had on me in terms of not only my mental health, but also just things like trust, communication. You know, you always kind of second guess people sometimes now a little bit, like, did that really happen? Did I see that the right way? Was I objective in that situation? You know, you start to question your own judgment, which I've never had to do before. I've always had great judgment, good instincts, generally speaking. No, maybe not in this particular instance, but, and anyway, so I said, that was it, we're done, and then took a break from that. And then he sort of got back in touch through a work number because I blocked all his calls, social media, everything, because I was so traumatized by the whole thing. Friends around me, the community around me were just incredible and so supportive, and saw me go through this huge dip, you know, where I felt as low as anyone could possibly get. To have a love that you felt that felt really great, to be ripped away from you through a series of drug use, paranoia, narcissism, and I felt, you know, I just had to get out. So long story is, about 2-3 weeks after that, he got in contact with me, and I agreed to sort of have some closure. I met him down at the waterfront, and we just sat on the grass and had a chat. And I said to him, look, there's just no way I can do this. You know, you need to go to rehab and sort your shit out. Like, it's just not something, it's just not a thing for me, you know. So then he went off to rehab and what have you, which was a great exercise, and we communicated sort of every day, and through all of that experience and journaling and this, we got him into AA as well, which actually turned out to be a better program than NA. So that was a really interesting thing. And the support network at AA, I think, is more geared around, you know, like, I don't know, maybe more professionals and things like that. It just felt like the NA stuff didn't really work for him very well. So that was quite interesting. And he ended up getting some really good sponsors. At one stage, 3 or 4 sponsors, which is really good. But the whole experience was very lengthy. And anyway, I agreed that if he had done that, then we would potentially look at, you know, cohabitating, whatever. And I actually gave him a second chance. That's how much I had opened my heart to this person. Anyway, so we did that. I gave up my apartment here. I've actually moved back into the same building I left, which I'm really happy about. I love this building. It's great. For great concierge, 24-hour security, a pool. It's got everything I need, right? And lovely neighbors. It's a lovely part of town. Anyway, so moved over to the North Shore, which was not a place I'd want to live. Anyway, so we moved in together, and it was kind of, within 6 weeks, I was moving out. I mean, it got so bad. There were times where I came home from work one time. So yeah, it was I felt myself becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm not a small person, you know, like, I live life in the open, quite gregarious, extroverted. I love people. I love hearing their stories. And I love being connected to people. Like, it's a great thing. And I've been like that since I was a little baby. My mother would say I would crawl along the sand on the beach in the summer and talk to people as a baby, you know, like that sort of stuff, you know. So I've always been that person, and became more and more isolated. So he isolated me from my friends, cut me off from my community. I wasn't able to see people, talk to people. He would say, okay, go out and have some time with your friends. I'm going to go and do this tonight. And then I would organize something, and then all of a sudden he'd cancel and say, oh no, I'm staying in now. You just have to stay in with me. So then I'd have to sort of cancel my plans, and felt bad for doing it. So the guilt trips, and then the paranoia, like the paranoia from the drug use is just like next level crazy. You know, you'd come home from work. Where have you been? Who have you been seeing? Let me see your phone. Who are you messaging? Like, just crazy shit. Like, times I'd come in and he'd be like looking around going, who's here? Is there somebody else here with you? Like, were you here last night at 2 a.m.? Like, weird shit. And that was just from years of abuse of this drug. Just got worse and worse. And so, yeah, about 6 weeks in, and I just was like, I've got to get out of here. And I felt like a shell of the person I was. My family were very concerned. My friends were very concerned. They saw me just becoming more and more isolated and cut off, shut off, where I wasn't able to communicate. He would even sense the phone calls I was having. If I was like out on the terrace or something, having a phone call, would be kind of quietly listening. What did you say that for? What did you tell them? What did you say about me? You know, this sort of stuff, without sort of laboring the point. But yeah, I mean, just became smaller and smaller, more isolated. paranoia was just out of control, and just this feeling of constant unease. I was always on walking on eggshells. I wouldn't know what to say. You couldn't even communicate anymore because you didn't know which way the reaction was going to go.
Yeah.
There was one time he threw me out on the street at 11 o'clock at night, screaming his head off. So I had to go to a friend's place and sleep on the floor for 3 nights. I mean, I've always lived in my own home since I was about, I don't know, 21 years old. And I've been very independent.
Mm.
So to be in a situation like that is very grounding. And you literally question yourself going, how the hell did I end up in this situation? Because it's so far removed from my normal life. It's so I can't even rap. I can't even. There's no words, to go from this to this over here. It was just I didn't even know who I was. That's how scary it was. So yeah, it's been a lot of therapy around the whole thing. But I would just say to anybody that's being or is in this situation, as strong as your feelings are and as bad as it is, you're not responsible for other people's emotions, feelings, and or the responsibility for their drug use, And the only thing I would say is, everything aside, just get out. Like, it's just not worth it, and it's a spiraling hole. I'm very lucky to have escaped, to be honest. I feel very, very fortunate. So basically, the person that I'd moved over here with was now living on the North Shore. They literally said, right, that's it. We're done with this. You're going to come and stay here. So I went to live back with my ex and his new partner, who was amazing. And they've become really, really close until I found a new apartment in the building that I wanted to be in.
Mm.
And they really just kind of put me back together in many ways. And I'm so incredibly grateful for their support and their love and their kindness. The friends that I have around me and the support that I've had around all of that has been so phenomenal. And it makes you very grateful. Even the small things like, I think when you've been successful, you've had a lot of money or whatever, and you've had a particular kind of lifestyle, and then to sort of be starting all over again, it makes everything so much sweeter to really appreciate the small little things. It's the friendships, it's the little phone calls, it's the, hey, how are you? It's even made me become a better friend because of it. So despite this whole experience, I've come out of it in a way that's made me a better person. It's made me more empathetic. It's made me care about my friends more and be more understanding, to check in more regularly and, try and be more supportive and caring, and lots of different aspects of things that I may not have done before. I might have been too insular or self-centered, whatever, or too focused on work. But despite everything, it's actually been a hard experience, but to come out of it, to realize that, hey, I maybe wasn't doing this very well, or I could do this better for my friends, or that's been a really lovely epiphany to have, and everything just feels so much better. Like just hopping into bed at night into yummy sheets and just being so grateful just for these little small things that we take for granted, we forget about so often, right? That's a really lovely moment to just go, yeah, this is good. Life is good.
It's important when we go through things like this. It's what can we learn from this, and what can we take from this? How can we take something that's extremely negative and actually get something positive out of it? And to me, the way you describe how you're feeling now, I remember when we talked when you were still kind of dealing with it all, because we talked about doing this episode some while back and you were not quite ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate your candor and your honesty, because it's so difficult, and I see it so many times with partners that's just keep trying and trying and trying and
Yeah.
trying. I My two exes, Mark and Ross, they almost cut me out of their lives because I would keep doing it, and I was the boy who cried wolf. They didn't see they experienced a little bit of the psychosis, but not like firsthand. I am so grateful I still have some of those people in my life. I've definitely I almost burned a lot of bridges because they just gave up. And to be honest, I don't blame them. I don't hold any hurt feelings around that. I understand why. And this is why a story like yours is important because it is important to put your own health first.
I
And
think, the other aspect of this too is that, I mean, I don't want to trash talk anybody, but,
no.
that's one aspect of it. There were really beautiful things that he was too. Like,
Mm,
there was so much potential in him in terms of the person that he naturally was. And I think there was so much trauma, from the past of things that had happened to him that are cause and effect, but
mm,
he was a very gentle, loving, beautiful human being. He was very thoughtful. He was very kind when he was in a sober state. He was amazing, an incredible human and capable of so much, highly intelligent. So there was lots of really good things. It's sort of like it's such a dichotomy between it's like Jekyll and Hyde.
yeah,
It really
that's how
is
I
like Jekyll
describe
and
my
Hyde.
addiction. That's how I
Yeah,
describe my Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That is my
yeah,
addiction. I use that term when I try to
yeah.
describe it.
It's an interesting thing. So, there's so much love there and to be as open hearted as that and then to see the pain of that, not only in the person and the struggle and the battle, but also how that impacts everyone around you. I think from his family, a lot of friends again walked away. Everyone just had enough, burning through people. Coincident, his work got rid of him. He ended up losing his residency, had to move back to the UK. So, a pretty sad story all around and having to start all over again, at 45, without anything and to have been on a pretty serious income, not have nothing to show for it. I mean, I think that speaks volumes, it's pretty scary.
It's so easy to lose everything with such a drug like crystal meth, especially
Oh,
when you get to the point where you start injecting. As someone who used to do injecting as well,
mm,
I it's so difficult as soon as you open that Pandora's box to go back.
mm.
As soon as you scratch that little itch there, it's even now after 8 years of not using, I still have days where I will obsessively think about it because it's that powerful.
Yeah, and that's what I've come to understand. I don't think anyone really understands unless they've probably done it or they've been in it. Even now, to me, I would not know what that feeling is, but I know that it's enough that you would sell a family member to get another hit. That's how
Oh,
strong it is.
yeah.
And that's a really scary thought. So it's just something I would never entertain or never go down that route because, like, why would you? There are too many things that are at stake that you just wouldn't want to lose those things. They're too important, you know?
Mm,
We're on this earth for a really short amount of time and it goes really fast. So the decisions that we make and the people that we let in, and the people that we love, you really do have to be somewhat guarded, I think, in some respects, but make good decisions. I mean, it's something that I would I go down that road again if I had a choice and I knew what it was going to be like. I don't know. It's a tough call because there's so much love there, and at the same time, there's so much pain,
mm.
you know. But would I trade the experience to get to the other end and be a better person for it? Yeah, I would. Do you know what I'm saying? It's sort of
Yeah.
like,
That's kind of how I think about my addiction. I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't gone through that.
yeah,
I wouldn't be talking to
yeah,
people and exploring kink and sobriety and lived experiences. If I just plodded along like I normally would, I would still probably be out doing circuit parties and probably not join the London Gay Men's Chorus. And there's a lot of like what ifs if I just,
you'd miss a lot of life. You
yeah.
know, I personally don't like having sex with zombies. It's not really something that I like to do.
You're not into zombies? No, no,
Not
not at
really.
all.
No, no. Zombies aren't high on my list of kink.
No, no.
No.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely seen my share of those. Especially now that I'm sober, I spot them a mile off. Uh,
This is the thing. Like, that's a funny thing you say because likewise, if you're out or you're seeing that you're in a situation, you can go, oh yeah, that guy. You're like it becomes so glaringly obvious because you know what the signs are now. Whereas before I'd think nothing of it and just sort of carry on.
oh, I have friends who are completely oblivious. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, how could you miss it? The man was gurning like a fucking
Yeah, it was
jeez.
off his chops.
How can you not see it? But then again, I'm like a fucking bloodhound when it comes to drugs now, sometimes it annoys me, and I have to laugh because when I was still using, I could, for the love of money, never find any drugs in the club. Now that I'm sober, I see them everywhere.
Yeah.
I
So
just I get really like, fuck's sake, why now?
Murphy's Law, Murphy's Law. You just weren't meant to have it then, you see.
So,
No, it's an interesting.
but
It's such an interesting journey, in terms of like being around it and understanding. I think I think with kink, and I mean for me, I mean most sort of more recently, I've started sort of seeing somebody again. It's a bit of a situation. I'm not going to go into it, but very very kink aligned, and neither of us would ever consider using drugs while we're having sex. It just doesn't occur to us. I mean, to be fair, I mean, the most we'll probably do is I'll stick a bottle of poppers on his nose, stick him in a gas mask, whatever. But I mean, that's kind of understandable when you're taking seriously large toys, like it is what it is. But to have that level of connection and to be able to be that intimate and to be able to look into somebody's eyes and say, when you're, whatever, and say, I really love you, it's a really beautiful moment. Because it's so connected and you're both home. You don't take your eyes off each other. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things you can share sexually and intimately, in that place of kink, as well as the other things that we get up to, organizing different scenes and whatever. I won't go into any details, but we're
you've
pretty
shared some of
extreme
them
with
in
what,
private
what
with
we
me, and
like.
they're very, very good. Some of the things you've described to me, and it's definitely where I'm
So,
just like, I need to adjust myself a little bit. So, and I like how your head works when it comes to kink. You are very much in the same vein as some of the stuff I'm into. So,
well,
it's
I think it's important that like you don't want to get bored with your kink. It's great to have kink, but also to consistently push your limits and
mm,
understand what that looks like over a longer period of time. I think it builds more intimacy. I think if you do the same thing day in, day out, you're going to get pretty sick of it. You've got to keep it spicy. So I don't know, maybe as a creative, I like to be creative sexually in terms of doing different things, organizing different things, thinking of different things. I mean, maybe I think about sex far too much, but I'm a bit of a sexual animal. I do love it. I really enjoy it. And so I think, why not?
well, that's why I think that was why we started talking. I was stalking you on your Instagram because your pictures on there are incredible, and
Well, that's
yeah,
fine.
well, but
I think
I
I'm a pretty
probably,
average Joe, to be honest. I'm just sort of like just getting by.
but no, you have a fan here, that's for sure. Just to
That's fine.
kind of round the episode off, and thank you again for sharing. Do you have a favorite piece of gear?
Oh yeah, I do.
Do you like?
I'm
Would
going to
you?
show you quickly.
Yeah, you can show me. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to bring the laptop upstairs. Hang on a second. You can travel with me for a minute. Hang on. So I'm in my closet here. So this is just like one section. I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see
for,
that.
for people listening, there's literally just reams and reams of leather jackets. It's
Yeah, it's heaps of it.
crazy.
So this is probably one of my favorite pieces. I wear it for riding quite a bit, but so it's a very old, beaten up jacket that I love, and absolutely, it's seen a lot of road, it's seen a lot of sex. It's
Hmm.
very musky, and I just love this piece. It always fits me like a glove, and I feel so fucking good in it. And then I've got another pair of like leather pants that I really love.
Hmm.
I'll put that down. Just bought a few of these things recently as well. Some nice little head harnesses and things for the boys.
Ah, nice.
Quite fun. And another one recently where you've got to have something you can bite down on. You know,
Of course. That
quite
that
fun.
that is needed. A boy needs something to bite
Need it.
down on.
So yeah, it's good.
And that was
It's
just a
not
little
shit.
section of it. Yeah.
Just a little section.
Fantastic.
So yeah, this is a little glimpse into the smaller closet and everything else that's coming. So
if anyone's listened or watched and they've really gotten out of something you've said and they might just want to talk to you, where can they get a hold of you?
Oh, you can reach me on Insta, no problem at all.
What's your Instagram?
So there's my Little Sharky one, Little Sharky. So it's LALSHARKY 77.
And if there was any piece of advice you would give to anyone, what would that be?
Hmm. Just be a good human. Just be kind, be gentle, be as understanding as you can be. Everyone's dealing with their own shit, you know? Just get through life and just don't be an asshole. Just look after people. It's really simple. Just don't be an asshole. Be kind. Let people into your circles. Talk to people, you know? Listen to people and their stories. Everyone's got something to say, you know? Just take some time to listen. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of stuff and the tide of life, you know, that's so busy all the time. But just the best thing I could always say is just to stop and to listen and just take a moment. And even if you're in a club or whatever, and they're not part of your circle or your clique or whatever, just don't be an asshole and just be nice and say, yep, cool, how are you? Have a chat. You never know what that person could teach you or who they are and who they know. You just don't know what doors are going to open. So, you know, I think the less clicky you can be and the more embracing you can be of other people, even if they don't look like you, is probably the best thing you can be. And that builds the community. It builds, you know, camaraderie and friendships. And I think that's probably the most important thing. We're not here for a long time, so make it count, you know?
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. That adds a lovely sentiment to end this episode on. Thank you very much, Jason, for coming on and talking to me.
Pleasure. Thank you, Ralph. It's lovely to see you,
You
always.
too. And that was this week's
Pleasure.
episode with Jason. It's been absolute joy to talk to him. If anything we've talked about impacted you as a partner or a family member and so on, remember there are organizations that you can go to for help, to talk to other people who are in the same situations. There are organizations like Al-Anon, which is kind of
Yep.
12-step, but just for sober people
Yes.
with family members that deal with it. So there are resources, and you're not alone in whatever situation you might be in. But I'll be back in 2 weeks with another guest, and yeah, bye.